I'm entitling this Devar Torah, Sustaining the Bnei Yisrael. And this is a consequence of the complaint by the Bnei Yisrael and Hashem's response to the complaint. Beshalach, the Parsha Beshalach, is a Parsha of great contrast. When we have the high point of the Shira, and also the great dissatisfaction, something's not right with the attitude of the people. The Ramban calls the complaint avon, and yet the Bnei Yisrael are not punished for it. So it's really a puzzle. So we hear we're talking about Tes Zion 3-8, and it would be helpful to have a Chumash handy. We're going to be talking about the commentary of the Ramban, the Rashi, and the Kli Yakar. So we hear that the complaint comes actually in Tes Zion, the second sentence in that chapter, and then after that sentence, it says, "Vayomer aleihem b'nei Yisrael." The children of Israel said unto them, that is to say, to Moshe and to Aharon, Mi yitain musenu b'yad Hashem be'eretz Mitzrayim. Would that we had died by the hand of Hashem in the land of Egypt. B'shiftenu al sir habasar b'yachlenu lechem lasova. When we sat by the flesh pots, and when and we did eat bread to satisfaction. Ki hotzesem osanu el hamidbar hazeh, that God brought us forth into this desert. Lahamis es kol hakahal hazeh bara'av, to put to death this whole assembly by famine. And the reference is to hunger. They need to have food for sustenance. They didn't have it, and the text makes a distinction between sir habasar, the meat, and lechem, bread, and it says that the word lisboa, to have satiation or satisfaction, is used with the bread and not with the meat. And so even though this is motivated by hunger, we have 2 sentences later another distinction that's being made. Vayomer Moshe v'Aaron el kol b'nei Yisrael. Moshe and Aaron say to all the children of Israel, Erev vidatem ki Adonai hotzi esrem me'eretz Mitzrayim. In the evening, you will know that God brought you out of the land of Egypt. And we know that they indeed, the Bnei Israel were taken out of Egypt in the evening. And then the next sentence says, Uboker, in the morning, Uriisem es kavod Hashem. You shall see the glory of Hashem. Bisham'o es tuluno seichem al Hashem, because he hears your complaint on God, against God. V'nachnu ma ki salinu aleinu. And why are you complaining about us? Your complaint really should be against Hashem, says Moshe and Aaron. So here we have a distinction between Erev and the word vayidatem, and you should know, versus, on the other hand, boker, uriisem. You'll see the kavod of Hashem. So what's this distinction between Erev and Voker and vidatem uriisem? We're going to get to that in a minute. Why that is important. But before that, just a puzzle from the Ramban. The Ramban says, Bnei Yisrael, of the Bnei Yisrael, it's an avon. It's a sin. This complaint. Ki ad ata, until now, the Ramban says, Einchem maminim b'Hashem Elokeichem. Until now, you don't believe, you don't have faith in Hashem, your God. The This is not said by Moshe and Aaron. It's said by the Ramban, a commentator. He says that's the only. He's saying that the only conclusion you can draw from the fact that Hashem tells them that Erev, in the evening, He's going to give them something to make them know that He brought them out of Egypt. He has to do that in order to convince them to believe that Hashem brought them out of Egypt. Now the question has to be asked: well, why would they not believe it, given all the nisim and the niflos, the miracles that Hashem did for them, including, we have to say, the Kriyas Yamsuf, the crossing of the Red Sea. It occurs to me, the Ramban doesn't say this, but it occurs to me that given this complaint and the Ramban's charge against the Bnei Israel, that the people were in the same position as Paro, literally in the same position as Paro, who did not believe in Hashem. And we know what happened to Paro. Here, on the other hand, and this is, I guess, a key point, that Hashem is being compassionate. He's not punishing the people the way He punished the Mitzrim. It's a teaching moment, it seems. And it's designed to have the Bnei Israel learn what Hashem has done for them. Even if they didn't appreciate it at that point, they're going to find out about it. So then it says, this is the 8th sentence in Tes Zayin. Vayomer Moshe, and Moses said, B'tzeis Hashem lachem bo'erev, basar le'achol, v'lechem ba'boker lisboa. When Hashem shall give you in the evening flesh to eat, meat, v'lechem ba'boker lisboa, and in the morning bread to satisfaction. Bishmo Hashem es tulunosechem, because God has heard your murmurings. He's heard your complaints. Asher atem malinim olav, that you have against Him. And what are we? V'nachnu ma, they say. He says, who are we? Lo aleinu tulunosechem ki el Hashem. Your complaints are not on us, but on Hashem. Of course, according to the Ramban, that's even a bigger a sin, a bigger shortcoming than if they were complaining about Moshe. And another thing that to keep in mind here, the distinction between bread and meat. All right, morning is the bread is to be found for them, to be given to them. Evening is to be given meat. Rashi comments on this pasuk. The Torah teaches us a rule of conduct. One should not eat meat to satiate, to satisfy one's appetite. And Rashi asks, well, why did He make bread fall for them in the morning and meat in the evening? He says, because bread they asked for was proper to demand, since it's impossible to live without bread. But meat they asked for improperly. Says Rashi, why? Because they had plenty of cattle. They could exist without meat. And the point here is that bread gets priority. If this is an explanation alone that they didn't need bread to survive. The bread, the manna, would continue for 40 years, but in the desert. But the bread would not. Now the Kli Yakar builds upon Rashi's comment about the bread that was proper to ask for and the meat that was not, to try to explain why the bread gets priority, right? So on one hand, he says the re'iyah, the sight associated with kavod Hashem, is more important than the knowledge, the idea associated with the meat. Even though he says the Kli Yakar, even though we can't see the King, Hashem, what we do see indicates that it's good for us. That is to say, the bread. So the re'iyah is the trust. It's true. The yediyah is important because it recalls the Yetzias Mitzrayim, the liberation from Egypt. But the bread is more important because it's associated with re'iyah, with sight, right? And the second point that the Kli Yakar makes is the purpose of taking the Bnei Israel out of Egypt was to remove them from the world of material appetite, and they should be preoccupied with necessity and not with materialism, which is not appropriate, especially in the desert, a makom chaser, a place that's lacking in provisions. It doesn't apply, it doesn't provide for people's needs. And so by this you'll know, he says, that I brought Bnei Israel out of Egypt. That's from the meat is going to be supplied, but not on a daily basis. But you'll know that the Bnei Israel was brought out of Egypt by Hashem. But in practice, the supply of meat is going to be is going to cease. It's going to be intermittent, and as we know later on, when the Bnei Israel asked for meat, for quail, and they were punished for it. So the idea is to change their orientation from material needs to necessity, and to appreciate what God has done for them. Shabbat Shalom.